Hello, welcome back to Mining Network. I'm joined with Alex Dorsch, the CEO over at Chalice Mining, and we're here at Beaver Creek in Colorado. Alex, good to see you.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Just for those less familiar with the project, just a pretty quick overview, if you don't mind.
Sure. So we made a polymetallic nickel copper PGE discovery in Western Australia in early 2020. It's a very large deposit and resource that we've now defined over the course of the last two and a half years. It's located about 100 kilometres outside of Perth in a really completely unexplored area. So we've really, I guess, put PGEs on the map for Australia, and obviously now we've got a very significant resource base to develop into a mine. But I guess more importantly, we've really found the first mine on and recognised, a new prospective province for this style of magmatic nickel sulphides.
Awesome. I just wanted, maybe if we could just touch on the capital structure at the moment.
Sure.
So sort of what your market cap is, how much cash in the bank, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we're capped at today about 1.7 billion Australian dollars at about $4.30 a share. We have 120 million currently in cash. So we recently raised some money in May at $6 a share. We raised 100 million Australian dollars. So we're well financed, certainly for the next 18 months at least. Our register is really, we've got the founder and major shareholder of the company, Tim Goyder. He owns 9% of the company. Directors and management, including myself, another sort of 2.5%. And then we've got a lot of institutional ownership, about 45% of the register institutional, and that's really a mixture of East Coast Australian superannuation funds, resource funds, as well as sovereign wealth offices in Middle East and through Europe and the UK, and obviously some very supportive shareholders in North America as well.
Good.
So we're in a great position, to be supported by the market like that.
Good. I just wanted to start off with, because I want to go into the regional opportunity here, because it's a huge new discovery, and there's lots of opportunity, not just at the main deposit, but let's go into the main deposit, because that is quite a reasonable size now. Maybe you could just run us through the actual grade and the amount of ore that's in the ground. Yeah,
so it's a 350 million tonne resource, largely in an open cut category, so mineralisation starts at surface. We've proven the continuity of the mineralisation down to 700 metres, and actually we've drilled now well beyond the limits of the resource as well, so we expect that resource is only going to increase over time. So 350 million tonnes, largely in a single conceptual resource pit, so constrained to a resource pit of approximately 2 kilometres in strike length, 1 kilometre in width, and approximately 600 metres deep. Obviously open-ended below that resource pit, and open-ended to the north as well. We've been restricted in basically accessing the area along the strike for some time, but we've recently in June this year started drilling along this belt. So the belt as a whole is a 30-kilometre long mafic, ultramafic succession, so classic layered intrusive complex. It's basically minimal surface exposure, no outcropping geology, so it's sort of been hiding on the outskirts of Perth for many decades, which is obviously came as a big surprise to us. But we target it all the way from conceptual targeting in 2018, and we own 100% of it. So obviously very, very exciting project to be a part of, to effectively see a 30-kilometre stretch of an intrusive complex being explored for the first time. So obviously we've done a lot of drilling. We've done about 230,000 metres of drilling on the resource at the southern 2 kilometres of the strike length. We've got 7 drill rigs working on the project at the moment. 4 of those drill rigs are working to the north along the strike length, and we're getting evidence of mineralisation about 10 kilometres away from the resource. So I guess you can use your imagination a little bit to anticipate how big this could get. Certainly we think it's already in the league of some of the largest intrusive complexes in the world, and some of them are responsible for some of the those giant nickel copper PGE systems, which are typically very long life, very lucrative mineral complexes. and so we're really interrogating that region and that 30-kilometre belt very closely. We're also seeing one of our our partner companies, a company that we have a strategic holding in, has made a relatively significant rhodium PGE discovery about 60 kilometres away from our resource as well. So just there's no drilling in the gaps effectively. So the upside here is incredible, and we can see many years of exploration to really interrogate that and hopefully come to the tier 1 scale deposits or the repeats of the Gonville resource as quickly as possible. So we've got a very large exploration team in Australia and a very significant exploration budget to do that. But obviously there's already a resource which is sufficient scale that we think is justifies a starting development. So we're sort of progressing a scope at the moment, looking at options to develop.
And how would that work with the scoping? So obviously I know you can't probably say too much until it's released, but 700 metres deep, are you looking at a big open pit here, or is it a mixture of open pit and underground? How might this work?
Yeah, so the mineralisation near surface is there's a thin oxide layer where the weathering profile has effectively weathered the sulphides, and then from about 40 metres deep down to 700 metres, it's fresh rock. So that's really orthomagmatic nickel sulphide mineralisation. So I guess there's multiple things obviously to consider in a study like that. Not only how to treat the oxide, the transitional, the fresh. We've got a number of different flow sheet possibilities to do that. And obviously the size of the resource is sort of indicating it could be a very significant development. So the grade and one of the unique parts about the Gonville resource we've got is that there's some very high grade mineralisation very close to surface. So there's the massive sulphide component of Gonville is grades about 3% nickel, 2% copper, and about 10 grams per tonne PGMs. So it's really sort of Norilsk-like material that we're starting with. That's the starting point for obviously the open pit. So we're looking at, I guess, smaller options that might sort of keep the capex and the risk down in a sort of starting development. Which is likely to be a smaller scale pit followed by an underground operation, but we're also looking at a bulk throughput operation that potentially considers more processing than just flotation and concentration. So I guess here through that study, obviously there's a large number of variables. We're not just dealing with a nickel sulphide system. It's a nickel sulphide system that happens to be very well endowed in palladium, platinum, cobalt, and copper as well. So there's many metals to consider, and effectively, we're really studying a very broad range of options here as to what we may develop, and we're likely to take forward a number of options through to a pre-feasibility study. So rather than I guess getting too fixated on what it is and what the right size of the asset is to develop, we're really taking forward options as long as possible. And we're also, fielding lots of interest from third parties, as you'd expect as well.
Sure. Obviously, we've got the scoping coming out, I think, towards the end of this year.
Yes.
You're looking at flow sheets there, and what does the metallurgy look like at the moment? Have you looked at recovery rates and what you might
Absolutely.
be able to do?
Yeah, so we've been doing test work effectively since the discovery hole. Almost, it was very obvious, from the first hole that, it looked a lot like it was going to be a mine. So we started test work really concentrating on a base metals flow sheet, so a sequential copper nickel flotation. We've done some work on other potential flow sheets, but not anywhere near as much as I guess the incoming hypothesis for us was, that a sequential flotation was the right way to go. The metallurgy is interesting in that we've got a situation where the copper recoveries are very, very good, irrespective of grade, and the PGE recoveries into the copper concentrate are also very good and very stable and very flat according to grade. So we've got a nice situation where the vast majority of the PGEs float with the copper into a saleable high-grade copper concentrate that we can sell to a whole range of international copper smelters, of which we've spoken to a number, and all have expressed a strong interest in a product like that. And then I guess it gets a little bit more complicated in the nickel side. So we're left with nickel, cobalt, and about 25% of the recovered PGEs that are left to float into the nickel concentrate. And here, where the nickel market is somewhat unpredictable at the moment. There's a big obviously event earlier this year that really sort of destabilised the whole system. So we're trying to obviously work through that as best we can, and obviously work out what we can do from a metallurgy side to maximise the value of that sort of product. But it looks like we can produce a saleable nickel concentrate from the higher grade parts of the Gonville system, and that does have some cobalt and PGEs in it. So obviously, we've spoken to a number of nickel smelters locally in Australia as well as internationally about offtake of that product. And again, the interest levels have been high, but I think the uncertainty out there and sort of the direction of the nickel market is going, particularly sulphide nickel, is very uncertain. So I guess that sort of led us to looking at what other processing may we want to do on the nickel sulphide or the nickel concentrate, and so we're investigating a number of concentrate enrichment flow sheets as well that could do another step of process, and that potentially allows us to sell a nickel cobalt product direct to a battery precursor manufacturer. And that's something that a lot of Western Australian nickel sulphide players are looking at, as well as obviously international sulphide players, because it's becoming clear that I guess the competitive advantage for sulphide nickel relative to Indonesian or Philippines lateritic nickel is significant. So obviously maximising the value of that and trying to get it direct to battery customers is obviously a good place to be.
Is that something that we might be able to expect to see in the scoping, or is that something that we'll have to wait till PFS?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to sort of encapsulate all of those options in the scoping study, and as you imagine, there's lots of options to investigate with those different flow sheet possibilities, and there's a very broad range of processing throughput rates as well. So I guess that's the process we're in at the moment, is just trying to go through the broad range of options set that we have, work out what is the sort of natural size in a couple of different sort of development scenarios in terms of starter case as well as ultimately like a bulk mining case.
Yeah. So it's obviously quite rare. You've made the first discovery about 2 years ago. You're now in a position, I think, is it about 20 million palladium equivalent ounces?
That's right. Yeah.
So you've already got 70% indicated. So You're in a very strong position.
Yeah.
What's the next 12 months in terms of exploration looking like? Are you going to be focused on more infill and more exploration on the existing resource, or are you really looking now further afield to find new targets?
A little bit of everything. So we're doing a little bit of further infill drilling at Gonville on the resource, really to just tighten up do a little bit of pseudo grade control work over a small area, and that should help us really refine our geostats model and refine that understanding of the grade variability through the resource. So there's one rig doing that work for us at the moment, 2 rigs drilling effectively for depth extensions of the resource, 2 rigs drilling for strike extensions of the resource, and another 2 rigs effectively drilling totally wildcat targets 5 to 10 kilometres away from the resource. And as I said, we are picking out every hole we've drilled 5 to 10 kilometres away from the resource has hit some sort of sulphide mineralisation. So we're sort of preparing here for a multi-year, very large-scale exploration program to define obviously the full limits of the system, and even 10 kilometres away we're seeing that the mineralisation is going to extend beyond that as well. So you can sort of picture that how long it might take to fully drill out a 30 kilometre long belt. So we're not going to interrogate every single square inch of that belt, but really what we're looking to do here is really find the shallow tier 1 scale deposits first, because obviously that's where you can really get some incredible value creation, as we demonstrated when we found Julimar. We went from a $50 million valuation to a peak of about 3.3 billion Australian dollars, and obviously now capped at at 1.7, but I guess the upside from our perspective is extraordinary, right? So
obviously you mentioned earlier that you completed a raise around 100 million. Where does that see you through to? Because there's 7 drill rigs going on, you've got studies going on at the moment. It's expensive work. I guess what I'm trying to work out is how long does that last?
Yeah, so our expenditure level at the moment is about 4.5 million Australian dollars a month. So we should be, fairly comfortable for the next 18 months in terms of financing requirements. We are looking at, very strategic type of partnerships as well to provide alternative sources of financing. There's also lots of other creative ways to get financing as we get more advanced. I guess, we think that next 18 months is really putting majority of the pre-feasibility study together, as well as obviously trying to really delineate work out where that next deposit is along that belt.
Okay, and I guess obviously you've got a great deposit, you've got lots of upside in terms of the regional exploration. You're in a great jurisdiction, good infrastructure, access to ports and power. I guess the only thing I'm thinking is, what could hold this up? Is there any permitting issues that could potentially arise, or how far have you started any permitting processes? I guess that's the main thing nowadays, isn't it? That could.
Yeah, I guess no matter where you are in the world, permitting a greenfield mine is becoming more and more challenging. We're lucky in being in Western Australia. There's a very well-trodden path for mining developments, of all scales and styles. This is we found a major discovery in a non-mining area though. So there's a number of sensitivities around the area and the communities around that area. So we're working with the communities very strong, very collaboratively and very openly to try and take them through take them with us along the journey to make sure we build trust and understanding of what an operation may look like, and ultimately really demonstrate what the benefits could be from having an operation like that in proximity to those communities. So I guess other comparable operations and recently permitted examples in Western Australia, Boddington is probably the most relevant comparison. Newmont, have a 40 million tonne per annum super pit gold operation, a comparable distance away from Perth, and it's really sort of on the fringes and within state forest area as well. So similar type of environment to us. Certainly, so there's definitely right ways to do it, and we haven't quite begun the permitting phase for a mine development as yet. But as soon as we, scope the options, we'll be starting that process. But in saying that, we have already established, to a large degree, the environmental baseline. So all the long lead items were very much, well underway, so that we have, all the very best information to tackle the permitting process. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and just to finish this off, you've touched on a lot of the milestones that are coming up anyway, but in terms of the next 6 months or so, what could be coming up? Obviously, you've got the scope in, but what else could we be seeing that's going to be value accretive?
Yeah, so currently we've got some very significant, validation drill holes underway, very deep geological holes to validate some recent seismic surveying that we did, and that illustrated that the extension of the host intrusion of the resource may extend at least 1.6 kilometres at depth. So we're doing some validation drilling that obviously is obviously very exciting. So that's really underway at the moment. And then obviously scoping study is at the end of this year. And then we'll be moving to really sort of beginning the process of mine permitting and really the full pre-feasibility study. The other thing, obviously, we were the first mover in this area of an 8,000 square kilometre land package. So we're looking to test at least 5 other Gonville-like intrusions that we've interpreted in the region. So that work's going to really begin sort of around October this year. And so we're going to be very, very active, outside of that 30-kilometre Julimar complex. We're going to be really testing for the first time some very exciting looking targets as well. So really, it's a pivotal time for the company, but we're very much working systematically through what we've got in terms of the resource at Gonville, the Julimar complex as a whole. We're really sort of putting the right geology, the right science, the right expertise to work to interrogate the opportunity we have. And yeah, I think there's a number of catalysts, and obviously with exploration, it's hard to predict, the outcomes. That's why we do it, because obviously the upside outcomes can be significant. So we'll obviously keep the market informed as our exploration progresses, and obviously looking forward to publishing that first study as well for our development.
No, looking forward to it. Alex, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks, Peter.
Cheers.